Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Scott from Nostalgic Nightmares, and welcome to my top 10 Goosebumps books from when I was a kid. This list is mainly based on memory, as anyone who listens to any of my channel already, you'll know that I haven't read these books since I was a kid, and I thought before I start reviewing them as an adult for my channel and rereading them, I thought it'd be quite interesting to do a top 10 of what I think was my favourites when I was a kid, because then maybe when I eventually get round to reading all 62 again, I can do another top 10 of what's my favourite as an adult and compare the two lists, because I think it'd be quite interesting to see whether my top 10 then will be the same as my top 10 now. So like I say, it is based on memory and what little bits I've picked up over the past couple of years from like YouTube channels and stuff. Most of these books I don't particularly remember, so if there's any of the books that aren't in the top 10 list that you think are like the best ones, this is just my opinion from what I can remember. I'm not saying these are the 10 best, these are just the 10 that I remember the most fondly. So while this list does contain some of what are classed as the iconic Goosebumps books, there is a good chance that some of them may be different when I do the top 10 list at the end of the series. I haven't done these in like a 1 to 10 order just because I find it really difficult to rank things. I might do that towards the very end once I've read all 62. These are literally just going to be in chronological order to save me a bit of hassle and about 3 hours trying to decide of the top 3 which ones were better than the others, because I'm really bad at stuff like that, especially because it's based on memory rather than what I know of the book now. As in, if I've read it now, it might be easy to rank it, because it's based on memory from so many years ago. I'm just going to do these in chronological order, so without further ado, let's jump straight into book number 7, Night of the Living Dummy. This is a classic Goosebumps book. Everyone that I know that does a top 10 list tends to have one of the Living Dummy books in there somewhere. This is the book that introduced the world to Slappy. For those who don't know, the book is basically about these two girls called Lindy and her twin sister Chris, and they basically get these dummies, these ventriloquist dummies, and they begin to come to life and start to terrorise the family. I won't go into it too much because there's a few twists along the way, but this is the book, like I say, that introduced the world to Slappy, even though he wasn't a major part of the book till later on. It's so iconic, I think, because it plays on a lot of kids' fears that their toys or their dummies or their dolls will come to life when they're not looking or when they're sleeping at night. And it's very much a fear that most kids have, and even some adults have fears of dolls and stuff. So this book, while it might have played on things like the Chucky series, was one of the first times that I really remember getting scared of dolls or dummies. And I think it's just really kind of, for those who have read it as a kid, it really sticks in your memory as something that was really scary and really played on just an everyday fear. Number 8, The Girl Who Cried Monster. This book is basically about a girl called Lucy Dark who's obsessed with monsters, telling ghost stories, but then eventually she sees a real life monster and nobody believes her. Again, I'm not going to go into these books in detail, I'm just going to tell you briefly what happens in them for those who don't know. But there is a few twists along the way, as there are in pretty much every book in this top 10 list. This book I really love because I used to love reading all the time when I was a kid. I spent so much time in the library, and a lot of this book takes place in the library. And just reading on monsters and scaring people has always been a big part of my life. So the fact that this book was always about basically me in female form as a kid was really cool. Obviously, I've never seen a monster, but I love the idea that a girl gets trapped in a library and sees the librarian turn into a monster. And this is quite early on in the book, so that's not really a spoiler. It was really scary for me, because I spent so much time in the library at school and the library near where I grew up, and just the idea of being trapped in there didn't necessarily scare me because my library was quite small and quite open, so it wasn't the same kind of effect that this book had, where it was a lot of shelves to hide behind and hidden places. But I think it's the idea of being trapped in somewhere that you know well and that you kind of love, and it being turned into like an evil place, it's quite spooky. So yeah, I think this is a really good book. I really love all the monster stories that she tells, even though it does get a bit tiring after a while. Just the idea of her basically being the boy who cried wolf. She constantly goes on about monsters, and then when she finally sees a monster, nobody believes her. And it's a really good moral story, really, about lying. And number 9, Welcome to Camp Nightmare. One of the reasons I love this book is not just because it's a really good book about camp, and it's got some good twists along the way and a good monster. The reason I love this book is because I have a massive love for camp books. I think it's always about going somewhere on holiday, like a really fun place, and it being kind of warped and turned into a scary place rather than a fun place. And I love camps. I went on to a summer camp thing for a week when I was in school. Was I in school? Yeah, when I was in school, I went away to like a summer camp thing for like a week where you do like where you build like a boat in the water and you go zip wiring and orienteering and you play lots of games in the woods and stuff. So although it wasn't like a totally competitive thing, it just kind of ingrained my love of camps, and I just love the fact that you're surrounded by woods and you don't know what the fuck's out there, but it's just really scary because it's just such a fun place to be with friends, or you might be with strangers you don't know, and you're trying to get to know each other and play all these fun games, and it's all kind of stuff that you don't normally do when you're at home, like all the games where you're like building fires or whatever, things like that. And just being surrounded by these woods, which you don't really think about at the time, but it's pretty spooky because you don't know what's out there. And I don't mean that in a monster way. I mean there's all sorts of animals and wolves and bears and snakes. I don't know, all that kind of stuff in the woods. So I just love camp books. I love Ghost Camp. I love Camp Jelly Jam. This is just the one that I have the most memory of, and I'll tell you why. There's a specific story behind it. My memory of this book, I had what's called the Fright Light collection. That was basically Camp Nightmare, Ghost Camp, and Camp Jelly Jam in a hardback 3-in-1 book, and it had a little torch attached to the top of it so that you could read it without needing to turn any lights on. Basically, I'm going to do another video about this because it's quite a big story. I was in hospital a lot. Oh, can't even talk. Hospital a lot when I was a kid, like for serious stuff. And I have a very vivid memory. I'd been in hospital for about a month at this point, and I was on the ward. I was in my own like isolated room. Again, I'll go into that another time. It's all fine now. I went into the ward, and there was one night I just could not sleep, or I kept waking up, and it must have been about midnight, 2 in the morning, something like that. And just for the life of me, I could not sleep. And of course, I could hear everybody else around me sleeping. So basically, I got up in the middle of the night. I grabbed my Fright Light collection, which I hadn't read at this point. Well, I'd read the books like ages ago, but I hadn't read the 3-in-1 collection. And I literally curled up, like, popped the pillows up behind my back, got my knees up, put my book on my knees, and just turned the little light on and read this book in hospital in the middle of the night. And it really took me away from where I was. Like, I'd been in the place for a long time. I wasn't necessarily scared, but it's not a nice place to be. And just reading this book, and it really taking me away from where I was and just getting lost in this camp. I loved it. I mean, that's why I know Camp Jelly Jam gets a lot more praise than Camp Nightmare does. But this book to me has a special place in my heart, so that's why it's in my top 10. Number 11, The Haunted Mask. Again, top 10 lists tend to always have this book, more so than Night of the Living Dummy. I see this book in top 10 lists. Again, it plays on a very primal fear from kids of most people go trick-or-treating at Halloween, where you put on a costume and go and ask for candy. And this plays on that fear of you putting the costume on and not being able to take it off. And that is quite scary, even though the book kind of takes it to a new level where the mask doesn't come off, it's like glued to her skin, it becomes part of her skin. And then the mask actually kind of starts to take over her and she becomes more evil. Yes, there is an argument that... what am I looking for? What am I going to say? Yeah, there's an argument that it doesn't make her evil, it just brings out the evil that's within her, which is an interesting argument, which I might have when I review the book. But yeah, I forgot to even review do a little synopsis of the last book. Camp Nightmare is basically about this boy who goes on camp. Scary shit happens. Haunted Mask is about Carly Beth, who's a bit of a wuss, and she's constantly being like bullied and had pranks put on her. So she gets a scary Halloween costume to take revenge, but the mask won't come off. And it is quite spooky, like how the mask that fuses to her skin and becomes her skin. And that's like a really scary thought, but I think a lot of people identify with this book because, like me, you might have been bullied a bit when you were in school. So I think a lot of people like the fact that she actually stood up for herself and went out and did something to kind of take revenge on the bullies, and so they were scared of her rather than her being scared of them. And I think that identifies with a lot of kids, really. So that's why it's in my top 10. Number 13, Be Careful What You Wish For. Again, I don't see a lot of praise for this book particularly. I know it's in the original few books, which is why, well, it's like number 13, 12, 13, 13. So it's still in the part of the Goosebumps, which is classed as like the vintage Goosebumps era. It's basically about a girl who runs into, do I want to call her a witch? I don't know if she's cast as a witch, but maybe she is. She basically gets granted 3 wishes, and again she's a bit of a loner. She gets bullied a bit, and she tries to use these wishes to make her life better, but they all have like bad consequences. The Three Wishes story has been done and overdone in films, in TV, in books, but this is the very first time that I kind of came across it. So I love this idea of getting these wishes, and them actually turning against her. I mean, since then, obviously, I've seen it in X-Files, I've seen it in Buffy, I've seen it in Ghost of Fear Street, I've seen it in Shivers. Maybe did Shivers do one? I'm not sure, but it's been done to death. And I'm not saying R.R. Stein came up with it, because he didn't. But it's just the first time I came across these Three Wishes. And again, I identify with the character being a bit of a loner, bit of a bullied character, and I love the idea about she made these innocent wishes and them being turned against her. I thought that was really interesting. Number 16, One Day at Horrorland. Do I really need to say anything? Everybody really who knows anything about Goosebumps knows what Horrorland is. It's basically about these kids, this family, that go to a theme park, which is a horror theme park, where all the rides are scary and all the characters are scary. And it's basically about whether or not this stuff is real or not. I love theme parks. I go to Disneyland as much as I can. And I don't really need to say much about this book. Everybody knows what's good about this book. It's just fantastic to see a theme park and all these fun rides being turned into some scary rides and not knowing whether they're real or not. The horrors are great characters. I mean, it was that good. It got a sequel and it got its own spin-off series. Yes, Night of the Living Dummy and The Haunted Mask have got their own sequels as well. But One Day at Horrorland's got its own series of books, which I've started reviewing on my channel. Please check them out. It's just fantastic. If you like theme parks, read this book. It's fantastic. I don't even know what else to say about it. It's just amazing. Number 35, A Shocker on Shock Street. I guess what I love about this book is some of the similar things that I love about Horrorland. This book is about these... Are they brother and sister? No. A girl and her friend Marty, Erin and Marty, basically go on a film studio tour for this place that's about to open. It's like one of the dads was up in the studio tour, their uncle, and he wants it to be like tested, so he puts them on the studio tour, and they go around and they see these sets and these monsters and stuff, and then again they come to life. Is it real? Is it not real? Who knows? I won't say anything. But again, it plays on the same things that I liked in Horrorland. It's about going to like a really fun attraction and it being turned into something scary. And yeah, that's what I loved about it. I loved seeing all these monsters coming to life and these like, horror villains, even though they were made up ones. It's just a really fun book. If you're a big fan of like film and monsters and stuff, please read this book. It's fantastic. Number 46, How to Kill a Monster. I really never see this being praised a lot. I'm not seeing it ever. I never see it getting dissed a lot. But I never see it in like top 10s. I never see it in people's favourites. This is one of my favourite books, or it was when I was a kid. Whenever I think about Goosebumps, this is always one of the first ones that comes into my head. And the reason for that is I love survival books. And this is very much about these two siblings that go to stay with their grandparents. And the grandparents live in the middle of a swamp in this like house shack thing. And they find out that their grandparents are keeping a monster locked up in a room. And they eventually basically release the monster, and it's about them trying to survive and defeat this monster. And what I've loved in books since I was a kid, and even to this day when I watch films and things and read books, I like very isolated books. So I like stories where characters are in one location and they can't get out of that location and have to find things there to survive. And that's what this book is. It's about these kids that can't leave the swamp, they can't contact the outside world. They're stuck in this house and they have to find a way to survive and kill this monster. So it's very much, while all the books are about survival to some degree, this is very much about survival in a very isolated situation. They've got no one they can go and ask for help, which on other books they can do. This one is very much these two kids trying to learn to survive. And I love that. I mean, it is in the late 40s, which basically is not seen as the best era, even though the next two books are in the late 40s on my list. I love it. If you've not read it, I would advise that you give it a chance, because I just think it's a really interesting, small, scary book. Number 48, Attack of the Jackolanterns. I actually do see quite a lot of praise for this book. I do know a lot of people really like this book. It's basically about, are they brothers and sisters or are they friends? These two people who go trick-or-treating on Halloween and are basically confronted by these two characters that are wearing pumpkin heads, like jack-o'-lantern heads, and basically force them to go trick-or-treating over and over and over and over again. It doesn't sound overly scary until you read it. But again, I love Halloween, I love trick-or-treating, or I did when I was a kid. I love the whole I love seeing kids going around dressed in costumes, trick-or-treating. It's just a really fun tradition. And this took that tradition and made it scary, which I loved. And it's just a really fun book. I love this one. I love the TV episode of it. At this moment in time, R.L. Stein has revealed that he's writing a new Goosebumps book called Jack Attack. Whether it's going to be some sort of sequel to the Jackolanterns, we don't know. It could be nothing even slightly related to it, which it probably won't be. But if it is a Jack-o'-lantern thing, I'd kind of love that, because from what I can remember, there is a story behind these Jack-o'-lantern characters which is never fully explored. I could be wrong. But it's just fantastic. If you like Halloween, like trick-or-treating, please go read this book. It is great. And finally, number 49, Vampire Breath. I friggin' love vampires. And I don't mean these shiny, sparkly Twilight crap that you get these days. They're not vampires. They're pathetic. Before I even read Goosebumps, I was a massive Buffy fan, even though it had just come out. And they were scary vampires, most of them. And I love old vampire movies like Dracula and Nosferatu. I love scary vampires. I don't know what it is about them, but I love them. So reading this book was fantastic. It's basically about these two. There are always two characters from what I can remember. Again, I think they're brother and sister. They basically find a secret passageway in their house. Or they could just be friends, I can't remember. And they find a secret passageway into this castle. And in this castle is like a vampire. And basically it's about them surviving in this castle while they're being haunted by this vampire. And it's about a bottle of vampire breath that they find, which I think brings the vampires to life. And yeah, if you like vampires, you like medieval or castles and things, this is a really fun book. It's just about these two kids trying to get away from this vampire and find out why there's like a secret passageway in their basement towards this castle. I could be mistaken this castle. I could be thinking of something different. I'm sure it was a castle though, but forgive me if I'm wrong. It's brilliant. It's just, if you like vampires, you like this book. And yeah, that's my top 10, guys. I know I didn't go into a lot of detail about all of them because I can't remember them fully. There is ones that I do love which didn't make it to the top 10 just because this was just the 10 that I picked out was ones that I remember most fondly. I loved like The Ghost Next Door, Stay Out of the Basement. I'm trying to think of some of the later ones that I really liked. I really liked ones like The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, Attack of the Mutant. I don't even know. There's tons of them. There's 62 obviously, and I've only named 10, so there's 52 more books that I could have talked about. So I am really interested to read them all again and see what changes in my opinion when I've read them all. I do think maybe Haunted Mask and Night of the Living Dummy, because they're so highly regarded, will still be my top 10. But I'll be interested to know if my top 10 even has any of these books in it. I might be slightly different, because from reading some of the books, again, as an adult, not necessarily Goosebumps, but Ghost of Fear Street and Shivers, the ones that I've kind of gone into going, oh, I'm not really interested in reading this one. It doesn't sound like my kind of thing. I friggin' loved. But yeah, guys, that's my top 10. It's just my opinion, so please don't slate me. Like I got on Twitter, I got quite a lot of abuse for not putting Beast from the East in it for some reason. What's your favourite top 10s? Do you agree with any of these lists? If you don't, let me know. If you do, let me know. But otherwise, please like and subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to get some more Goosebumps books out, Goosebumps videos, and do some more reviews and things shortly. If you want to follow me on Twitter, my Twitter is @NostalgicNightmares without the vowels. So @NSTLGCNGHTMRS. But if you just Google, just Twitter search Nostalgic Nightmares, it should come up. I'll put a link in the description below. And yeah, guys, that's my top 10. Please let me know what you think. Until next time, guys, keep on screaming.